Hey, it's Vicky, and today I'm here to talk about the books that I read in May. May was just a month for me. First of all, I didn't finish. I think by the time it was mid-month, I had finished one book on audio. So the first half of the month was very slow for me. I just was very slumpy. I didn't want to read. I was opting to watch Netflix or play the Switch or whatever. I just wasn't in the mood to read. And then in the second half of the month, I actually did complete a lot of stuff. A couple of the things were pretty short, and that's why I completed them a lot. There's at least 4, I think, that I ended up completing that were super short. Otherwise, this wrap-up wouldn't be very long. But then in the third week of May, my husband got COVID. And so he was isolated in our bedroom for, almost a week. And so I was just single parenting, which was interesting and exhausting. So super, super props to all you single parents out there, because it's a tough job, but it's especially tough when you're flying solo. So I got a taste of that for sure. Luckily, my husband's case was very mild. And he's fully recovered, and miraculously, me and the kids did not get it. I don't know how that happened, because we all live in the same house and all that. I was just I don't know how we're gonna dodge this, but somehow we did. So it was kind of a stressful time though. And yeah, so reading was just not a priority in May, but I did still manage to complete 8 things. But like I said, 4 of them are super short. So yeah. Anyway, let's get into the wrap up. So the first book that I completed in May was one I listened to on audio, and that is Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend, and the audiobook is narrated by Gemma Whalen, and I have to say the audiobook was fantastic. If you're looking to read these books, I definitely would recommend the audiobooks, because she does a really good job of just doing the voices and stuff. I just really enjoyed her narration. So this is the second book in the Morgan Crow series, I'm assuming is what this is called, or is it the Nevermore series? I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, this one is the second book, so I can't really say too much about the plot or anything, except I will say that it was enjoyable. And I still really love Morgan, or Mog, as a character. I don't know. She's just the type of main character I like. She's smart. She's kind of sassy. She's funny. Yeah, I just like her. And I also really love Jupiter, who's kind of her mentor. He's a great character as well. So, and then this one just had just really some really fun magical elements in it that I just really liked. And I don't want to say what they are, because, I don't want to ruin the fun for anybody. But there's definitely some magical things about Nevermore that are just really fun, and I really liked. So yeah, I definitely like the way it ended and everything. I definitely want to continue on and read the third book. I think the 4th book comes out this year. So yeah, I need to kind of get caught up. So yeah, this was enjoyable. I really liked it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in May was an anticipated release. This was a book that I pre-ordered because I have really enjoyed this author's work in the past and was excited about this one. And yeah, I read it in May, and that is The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. And this is about our main character. Oh my gosh, I already forgot her name. How horrible am I? Shay. She is working, her day job is working in some sort of medical office. She's a receptionist. But then her after work passion or what have you is that she runs this podcast / website called The Book of Cold Cases, where she talks about cases, specifically murder mystery sort of cases that have gone cold. And in her particular area where she lives in the Pacific Northwest. There was this case back in the 70s where this woman, Beth, can't think of her last name. I know her first name was Beth, but she was acquitted of murdering these two men. And she was acquitted, but like a lot of people still think she got away with it and whatnot. And basically Shay gets the opportunity to sit down and interview Beth. And then the story just sort of goes from there. Unfortunately, this one was a disappointment for me. I think the thing was, and that's the thing is, I'm still not entirely sure if this book was disappointing or was slow and slumpy to me because I was feeling slow and slumpy, and this book was kind of just the book that is kind of getting the blame for that, or was I slow and slumpy because I was reading this book? You know what I mean? Because this was so slow plot-wise. I started this book on the 2nd of May, and it took me until the 20th to finish, which it's less than 300 pages, I think, which, so it took me that almost, like, it took me like 3 weeks to read, which is just a long time for me, especially for like a thriller. And yeah, the plot was just super slow. There's like a reveal. Yeah, pretty much like a reveal. I don't want to call it a twist. I guess you could, but I don't know. That happens probably, in my opinion, happened too early, which left the book kind of just not really having that sort of like mystery factor, like, oh, well, what happened sort of thing. Because you kind of get told something where you're like, oh, that's what it was? Okay, and then the book carries on for a long time after that. And so that certainly didn't help. And then, I don't know, the ending was just like meh, like it just didn't deliver in general for me, which just sucks because I love Simone St. James. The past 2 books of hers I've read, I really liked. And yeah, this one, it had the supernatural stuff that I like in her books, but I felt like there wasn't enough of it, in my opinion. And yeah, I just wasn't really digging this book. So unfortunately, yeah, this was disappointing, and I gave it 2 stars. The next book that I read, I don't actually have anymore because I borrowed it from the library and have since returned it, but I read Ain't Burned All the Bright by Jason Reynolds and Jason Griffin. So the words were written by Jason Reynolds, and then the artwork was by Jason Griffin. And this book was basically a long poem, basically talking about just kind of the chaos that was 2020. So it talks about, obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic. It talks about all the protests and stuff that were happening after George Floyd was killed. And so as a person that lived through 2020, it's definitely relatable for sure. But I think in this case, the kind of lens and focus of this was what it was like for the Black community specifically in 2020. And so it was a very powerful read. I just love Jason Reynolds' words. And then the kind of coupled with Jason Griffin's artwork, I wish I would have taken some pictures and done like a flip through so you could kind of see what I mean. The artwork was very layered and textured, and it just was, the way it was all kind of put together, and the way that it sort of flowed throughout was just, it was really cool. It was just that they really, their collaboration was just really great. They really worked well together, and I really enjoyed this. It was, like I said, very powerful, a very quick read. I read it in one sitting, even though, you know, it's like a 300-page thing, but because it's a long poem, you know, it goes quick. And yeah, it was really good. So I definitely recommend it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I completed in May was such an accomplishment because I started it in February and I finished it in May. And I did a whole vlog about it. That is Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. So I'm not really going to go into detail about this because I talk about it at length in that vlog. I did this for my 100 Epic Reads series that I do here on my channel, and this was the one I chose for this particular episode. And overall, I enjoyed this. I gave it 3.5 stars because it was very long, and it did sometimes feel very long, but I think for a classic it was very approachable, and it was a pretty good story, and I liked it. So yes, if you wanted to get my more in-depth thoughts on this one, go check out that vlog. I will link it if you want to watch it. But yeah, this was a 3.5 star read. The next book that I completed in May was one that I listened to on audio. Another one that I would really recommend the audiobook because it was good, and that is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, and it was narrated by Kurt Graves. And I picked this up because I read The House in the Cerulean Sea last year and really, really loved it. I just loved TJ Klune's writing. I loved the sort of magicalness of it, the kind of hopefulness in it. The characters were great, everything. So I picked this up basically because I was like, oh, it's TJ Klune's new book, I'm gonna pick that up, basically. And this one is about, I forget our main character's name, Wallace, who is an attorney, and you know, he's not a very nice guy. And he dies at the beginning of the book. So this is not a spoiler. He dies, and basically the story is him going to sort of a, it's not quite the afterlife. It's sort of like a holding place where you go until you're ready to move on to the afterlife. And so it's about him going to this place and the people that he meets there. And that's all I'm going to say about it. So what I really liked about this was it had that same kind of emotional, just almost, even though it deals with death and various aspects of death, the 5 stages of grief, all that kind of stuff, so kind of a heavy topic, it also had this hopefulness to it that I just really liked. And it was emotional in a couple of ways. Like, there were times where you're laughing, and then there's times where you're trying not to cry. So it's kind of one of those books that just tugs at your heart in a number of ways. And I, again, really liked the characters in here. Specifically, there's a character named May who I just loved. I just thought she was so funny and just so great. The place he goes to and just the kind of the way it all works, I just liked that approach to a story about death and moving on to the next phase or whatever. I just thought it was a cool concept. I really liked it. And like I said, it had that sort of TJ Klune, just kind of humor that I just really enjoyed. And yeah, it just kind of warms your heart and breaks your heart at the same time in some cases. And yeah, I just really liked it. So The House in the Cerulean Sea is still, to me, superior. But I think if you liked that and you liked those things about The House in the Cerulean Sea, the overall kind of cozy, hopeful sort of feelings, I think you would like this one too. But for me, House in the Cerulean Sea was still better, but this was still good, and I gave it 4 stars. All right, the next book that I read was another one that I got from the library, so I have since returned it. And it was a graphic novel, the first volume in this graphic novel series, wow. And it was called Something is Killing the Children. So I read volume 1, and it is by James Tynion IV, Werther Dell'Edera, and Miquel Muerto. And this is basically a horror graphic novel about this town where, basically what the title suggests, there's a monster and it's killing kids. And this sort of mysterious girl comes to town to try to stop the monster. And so I think the plot was fine. It was, you know, a pretty cool sort of graphic, creepy sort of story. It wasn't like, it didn't scream original to me for some reason, but it was still like enjoyable in terms of just like a good horror story about a monster. What got me though was I wasn't a huge fan of the art style. I don't know why. I don't know. Like, I just kind of, especially when it came to some of the scenes with a monster, I don't know. It just didn't like, it wasn't just to my taste, I guess. I don't know. But, and then there were times where the panels, when you were reading the page, it was kind of confusing because sometimes they crossed both pages. I'm trying to explain this and like, I don't know if it's coming across right, but sometimes you had to read the the story across both pages. Then sometimes it was, you had to go down one page and then up and then down to the next page. And so a lot of times it was like pulling me out of the story because I was like, wait a minute, how am I supposed to be reading this? And I know like graphic novels do that all the time, but for some reason I had a hard time with this one, telling like how to read it. I don't know. It was weird. So I gave this 3 stars because I did like the story. It was a quick read, a good horror story, but I don't know if I want to continue just yet with the series. Let me know if any of you guys have read Something is Killing the Children and if I should continue, because I'm kind of on the fence about it right now. So yeah, it was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was a 3-star read. The next book that I read was one that I put on hold for the audiobook for my library because I listened to a podcast where the episode was about this book. They interviewed the author, and it got me interested, especially because I have read one of this author's books earlier this year. So I put it on hold and it came in, and that book is The Swimmers by Juliet Suka. So back in January, I read When the Emperor Was Divine, and I really liked Juliet Suka's writing. I thought it was great. So when I heard about this book, I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Why not? Because I enjoyed her stuff, and it's a pretty short book. I want to say it was around 200 pages. But basically, The Swimmers is about these group of people that swim in this public pool. It's like this kind of like underground public pool, and the people that go there are very dedicated. They go every day, and they kind of all know each other, but only in that setting. They don't really like hang out outside of the pool or don't really know anything about each other personally, other than like, oh, so-and-so swims in lane 4, this person does this, and it all like kind of is about just their swimming life and existence. And what happens is a crack appears in the bottom of the pool one day, and so there's this sort of threat that the pool will not remain open, and these people are all just really concerned and upset by it because this is such a part of their daily routine, and they're like, why is the crack there? You know, all this stuff. And so I went into it thinking it was going to be this sort of quirky book about these quirky characters and their swimming hobby, and how it's, you know, basically their hobby is kind of under attack because they might be losing this pool, which is the story too. But it's more than that. And I don't want to really say too much more because I kind of want you guys, if you go into this book, I kind of want you to go into it like I did and be sort of surprised by what it ends up becoming, because I was surprised by it, pleasantly surprised. And once again, I feel like Juliet Suka's writing is just so good, and she does impacts so much into just like this 200-page story, and it has this sort of quietness, this sort of aloofness, but it's also just like, I don't know, it also just hits you really hard. And yeah, it just really surprised me because it was just so much more than what I was expecting. So that's all I'm going to say about it. If it all piques your interest, check it out for sure. I listened to the audiobook, like I said, I got it from my library. The narrator was Tracy Kato Kiriyama, I believe is how you say it. She did a great job. Yeah, it's a great one. I definitely now, I believe Juliet Suka has one more book that I haven't read. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I definitely want to read it now because she is a great writer. So yes, I gave The Swimmers 4 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in May was a memoir called Golem Girl by Riva Lair. And this is Riva's memoir, obviously, about how she was born in 1958 with spina bifida. And so at the time that she was born, babies with spina bifida often didn't live to be 2 years old. They had a very, I want to say like the mortality rate was like 85% or something like that. And so she just grew up in a time where she wasn't expected to live. And however, she did live. She's still alive today, as of right now, this filming. And it's just about her growing up with this disability and what it was like to have a disability during that time. Like I said, she was born in 1958, so she grew up in the 60s and 70s, you know, came of age in the 60s and 70s. And she ended up becoming an artist. And so throughout the book, especially the later part of the book, when she goes to college and stuff, goes to art school, you get a lot of pictures of her artwork. She did mostly portraits, and yeah, she just kind of tells her story about what it was like growing up with spina bifida, some of the challenges that she faced, a lot of stuff in the early part, especially about her family. And I found that section particularly just really interesting. I don't know if it's because I just love like coming of age stories and just like stories about how people grew up, but I just found her story so compelling. And she just has this like kind of funny humor about her that I just really identified with, I really liked. And then like in the later part, when she reaches adulthood and she starts like working as an artist, she really starts to focus more on and meeting other people with disabilities, and that kind of influences her work as an artist and stuff. So I actually really liked this. It was like I said, funny at times. It was sad. I just was really drawn to her as a person. So I really liked this. It was really good. And yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. All right, guys, that is it. Those are the books I read in May. Like I said, a couple of them were very short. Otherwise, this would have been a shorter wrap-up for sure. I hope June is a better month, that I'm hopefully getting my groove back in terms of my reading and wanting to read. As of right now, as of today, I have been, you know, having a desire to read and reading every day, so that's good. But yeah, it was an interesting month for sure. So hopefully in June, I get a little bit more back to normal. So yeah, let me know down below what your favorite read for May was, because I would love to know what everybody loved in May. And that's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will chat with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.